and this is our mini unit on waste.
This unit of work is designed specifically for Year 4 students. This unit is engaging for students as it caters for all learning styles through providing students with an abundance of sensory modalities implemented throughout their learning experiences. These include oral, reading and writing, kinesthetic, and visual. In this unit of work, students will be required to investigate the issue of waste. In the post-fieldwork activities, students will be required to answer the following question. How can we better manage the amount of waste at Grinstead Park? Students will participate in pre-fieldwork, fieldwork, and post-fieldwork lessons, which will investigate the amount of waste and the proportion of each waste type at Grinstead Park. Over the course of these lessons, students will focus on 4 of the humanities and social science concepts for developing geographical thinking, with an emphasis on the concept of place. The HASS concept of place is at the forefront of all lessons. This concept encompasses environmental features, location, human features, and characteristics which can be influential to what exists and can have impacts on the future. Students will be able to identify the interconnection between the HASS concepts, as place will have direct relation to environment, which is strongly linked to sustainability.
This mini unit directly aligns with full content descriptors from the Australian curriculum, which requires students to explore the use and management of waste, record and represent data, propose action and present their ideas. Through this fieldwork project, students recognise the importance of the environment, identify interconnections, collect, record and present data in order to propose action in response to the issue of waste management at Grinstead Park. The fieldwork component would be conducted at Grinstead Park, which is located along Shan Street in Enoggera. It can be accessed to the public. It is a large natural environment consisting of several man-made items including playgrounds, sporting equipment and seating areas. There is no flora, however there is the occasional grass plant. The fauna that inhabits this environment are insects, birds and bush turkeys. In order to complete fieldwork, a bus would be required to access Grinstead Park, as it is adjacent to a busy street and would be too far to walk with students. The main car park off Shan Street does not have adequate space for a bus to park, therefore the bus would need to park at the bikeway off Royal Parade. There is a path from this entrance which connects to the fieldwork site. At the end of this path there is the undercover table which will store the students' bags while they are completing the fieldwork activities. Upon exploring the park, we have noted that there are a few safety concerns which would have to be considered. On the path from the bus entrance there is a small creek which runs underneath a bridge that students would have to cross. The park is backed onto by housing, which could be a privacy issue and safety concern for some parents. Students would be provided gloves to ensure good hygiene. Majority of their park is unsheltered, therefore students would need to ensure they are being sun safe. Lastly, there are also barbecues on site, which are easily accessible. Students would need to be reminded of the expectations and their responsibility prior to arriving on site to ensure all students' safety is prioritised.
The pre-fieldwork lesson will consist of a diagnostic assessment, a sorting activity, and revising forms of data and data collection. The diagnostic assessment will require students to complete a questionnaire. These questionnaires will enable the teacher to gauge students' level of background knowledge and understanding surrounding waste. For example, do students know? What are the different types of waste? What is the difference between recyclable and non-recyclable waste? How can waste be collected, or how can we reduce the amount of waste we produce? Following the diagnostic assessment, students will complete a sorting activity where they will be given an A3 piece of paper with 3 different boxes, labelled general waste, recycling and compost. Students will also be given cutout images of various types of waste and will then need to place them into the correct box. To consolidate their knowledge, students will then participate in a brief class discussion surrounding various types of waste. Before students attend fieldwork, they will need to understand what forms of data they will be using, how to collect this data, and how to record this data. Students will use the sorting activity as an example for this activity. Students will record how many types of each waste they are using tally marks. Students will then be required to correctly present this data in the form of bar graphs. At the end of the pre-fieldwork lesson, students will have consolidated their knowledge surrounding various types of waste, specifically general waste, recycling and compost. This pre-fieldwork lesson consolidates and expands upon student knowledge. It focuses on various types of waste as well as different forms of data and data collection methods. This lesson is important as Vygotsky's zone of proximal development suggests that teachers must tailor their lessons not only for the present, but for future lessons and students' future development. This lesson integrates components of both literacy and numeracy. Literacy can be seen throughout this lesson as students will A. be exposed to new vocabulary, and B. are required to use the correct terminology throughout. Moreover, literacy components are also present in the diagnostic assessment, where students are required to complete their questionnaire. Similarly, numeracy components are evident in the last section of this lesson, where students will be collecting and recording data.
The fieldwork lesson would be conducted over a half-day excursion to allow for transportation, instruction, activities, lunch break and worksheets. Students will be in 4 allocated groups, which will be arranged during the pre-fieldwork lesson. This will allow for students to be grouped based on ability level to cater for students who need further assistance. These students will be allocated to the aid of the teacher, whereas high achieving students would be supervised by a parent. Prior to attending fieldwork, it would be explained to students the 4 sections of the park which will be investigated, and which group will be examining which section. This ensures that on the day of fieldwork, more time can be spent on the learning activities. This fieldwork lesson consolidates their learning from pre-fieldwork and expands on their knowledge surrounding the types of waste, data collection and data representations. As per the pre-fieldwork lesson, students will peruse the allocated section of the park for waste and then sort into either the compost, recycling or general waste category. Students will discuss with their peers and supervisors if they have any uncertainties to ensure there are no misunderstandings. They will then incorporate technologies for photographic evidence of the waste that their group collected and the scope of the categories. Students will then record the amount of waste they found for a category using tallies in their work booklet. Students have prior knowledge of this from pre-fieldwork to ensure students are expanding their knowledge and understand what they are required to do. They will then discuss their results with group members and collate their data. Each group will then transport their waste categories to the meeting point to compare other groups' data. They will collaborate their ideas and findings. Ensure that students place the collected waste into the bins when leaving the fieldwork site. This lesson follows the inquiry-based learning model to develop students' critical understanding of the world. It also aligns with the geographical inquiry model as students explain the complexities of the world around them, start to make links between geographical concepts and begin to identify the patterns and processes that exist. The HAS concept place is embedded throughout this fieldwork lesson as students are immersed in the environment of Grinstead Park. Students will be required to complete a work booklet while on site which will record their learning, display their collected data and results as evidence of students' learning. This integrates both literacy and numeracy, which is an essential part of the post-fieldwork learning.
The post-fieldwork lesson will have the students back in the classroom and will consist of class discussions, graphing and analysing their data, and time permitting, students will also begin drafting their letter to the Brisbane City Council on the potential changes that could be made to help Grinstead Park better manage their waste. Before the post-fieldwork lesson, ensure you have a copy of the final data results for each group, for example a photo. This is to ensure all students have the correct data that will be used in the following activities. As a class, students examine the data collected from the fieldwork, the tallying worksheet and photographs, discussing their observations from their zone. Students should make observations such as any bins, animals, play equipment or gardens that were in their zone as well as the waste they collected. At least one student from each group will need to share so that all students can experience what happened in each zone. Display some of the photos taken on the day and encourage students to make assumptions about who visits Grinstead Park, drawing from the data. For example, the Nerf gun bullet found suggests that other older children use the park. Talk about the play equipment and gym facilities and discuss with students why they would want to visit again with friends or family, or why not. We really want students to connect with the significance of their local park and the importance of keeping it clean for everyone. Students will then need to organise their data from the fieldwork into a bar graph. This was taught in Year 3 mathematics and students should be familiar with these methods. However, it is still important to revise the key elements of making a bar graph and assist students who need it. Additionally, a checklist will be provided. Here is a student example of what would be expected. Students will also be developing their mathematical skills on a Year 4 level in the way students analyse the data and identify the information it provides them. Through teacher-led discussions, students will identify patterns and trends within the data, looking at the high and low areas. Again, students will work in ability groups. Lower achieving students are to analyse one zone and discuss why the highest and lowest waste categories might be. Higher achieving students will have the opportunity to cross-analyse 2 or more zones to find similarities or differences in the data. Encourage students to think about what they know about different types of waste and the facilities already provided at Grinstead Park and whether this is reflected in the data. The aim of this discussion is to have all students using and developing their critical thinking skills. Students will then discuss their responsibility to the park as a visitor and whose responsibility it is to maintain the park. The class will then research Brisbane City Council website to find Grinstead Park and discover they are currently making changes to enhance the space. If time permits, students will begin drafting their letter. Students will be tasked with writing a letter to Brisbane City Council with one suggestion they have to make Grinstead Park better manage their waste. Students must use the data they collected, photographs or graphs, to justify their suggestions. This task will also develop their literacy capability as they learn the formatting and skills required to write a formal letter. Suggestions include, but are not limited to, an additional bin where there is not currently one, the installation of a compost bin to then fertilise the green spaces, a reverse recycling vending machine for recyclable cans and bottles. Students will be encouraged to think creatively about their suggestion, but also they're reminded that the data needs to support their suggestion. The aim of this mini-unit on waste is for students to develop their skills in identifying and investigating problems and using their investigation to suggest a solution. Moreover, this unit fosters students' inquiry skills and enables them to seek solutions to problems that affect them and the places they frequently visit, which in this case is Grinstead Park.
Thank you for listening. We hope you have found this presentation of our mini unit of waste helpful
And can adapt this unit of work for implementation in your own classroom.
Have a lovely day.